Hey customizers, welcome to the next adventure at Talking Hands Customs. To all my subscribers, thank you very much, and if you're joining us for the first time, welcome to the channel. In this series, we're going to talk about doing a subject that is either fragile or finicky. We're going to be doing a Night Force Firebat. For those of you who watched the Sunbow Firebat series, you can see how quickly something can go off the rails, and we fought through and brought it to success and completion. So I'm quite happy with that project. However, we've learned some things about the Firebat. The first one being that the plastic is extremely brittle. Does that mean that you shouldn't customize a subject that's like that? The answer is no. Of course, you can customize whatever you want, but we do have to take some things into consideration. So with the Firebat in particular, we know that it's prone to breaking. The fins broke. The wings broke, which is pretty much the most thing you have to worry about, and then upon reassembly, the fuselage broke and the canopy broke. So pretty much anything that could have broke. And we had to glue and sand and try and hide all of those errors. We reconstructed some of those with milliput. And while certainly the efforts paid off, the question becomes, should we have to do that every single time? And I'm going to show you that the answer is not always yes. So in this case, what I've done is I've disassembled the Firebat as far as I'm willing to take it. And what that does is it presents us with at least 2, if not 3 considerations. The first one being are the angles for applying the paint. With the fins attached, we have to get paint down in there. And we were able to clear coat that, but that's getting clear coat on everything. So we weren't worried about overspray or anything like that. While we could mask, the question is, will we be able to mask so well that we can paint the fins separate from the wing and make it look like they're 2 separate pieces? So in this case, we may have to employ a brush technique to get the paint everywhere we want to go. The second consideration is that the wings fold. And right now, because I haven't taken them apart, they're still in one piece. And we want to preserve as much as we can, if possible, the function of the wings folding and unfolding. What that means is we will have to get paint in all of these nooks and crannies and keep it separate from other moving parts. So that way we can preserve the scheme overall, and that we can keep any sort of paint damage and wear to a minimum. And see if not, that we could actually coat these pieces in such a way that you never have to recoat them again. For Night Force itself, it's actually a little bit of a deceptive paint scheme in that if you've never had any Night Force vehicles, I didn't when I was a kid. Most of my references were all, if not all of them, have been photographs. Is that it's not all black, and there isn't as much orange as you might think. The first time I tried to do a Night Force custom, my visualization had way more orange on it, and it was a Conquest X30. And when I started painting it and putting it together and the project was coming to life, I realized that I was planning on putting too much orange on there. And the reason why that is that because the orange is so bright, I won't say it's fluorescent, but it's very brilliant orange. It catches your eye. So because it is so bright and powerful that you think there's more there than there actually is. And the other color that's there is a very dark gray. If you look at the Night Boomer, which is the Night Force Sky Striker, the whole wings and the tail fins are all gray. So that's what I used for my the influence for my Conquest X30, although the wings aren't separate pieces, but in this case they are. So bringing it back to this subject, the wings are going to be gray and the tail fins are going to be gray. And in looking for our color balance, that's actually quite a bit of gray beside each other. So we have to be careful in that the gray doesn't overpower the black in volume on the subject, and that we maintain that color balance as well. The consideration with the Firebat is that it doesn't have, it's not a large subject, and it doesn't have a lot of room to put certain things. You may want to put the lower fuselage gray, but that might take away from it, especially seeing as how the fins are going to be gray in this case. The other thing I have to do is consider what color I'm going to make these engine vents or air intakes, whatever you want to call them, because they'll be back here on the back end of the ship, and if I have gray, 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 it might be too much. Black is a strong color, as we've talked about before, So it'll really be a balancing game. I am super excited for this project, however, because I love Night Force and I love the Firebat. So the consideration being is that all things being equal, the color balance might be even trickier than worrying about where the paint goes and how well that functions. Other than that, the other trick that I found for not breaking the canopy is when you remove it. Some canopies will pop off when they're in the up position, but this one actually pops off best after you just open it. So maybe open it about that much and gently and consistently apply pressure until it comes out. The reason why that is that the crossbar here that handles the rotation inside the clip in the fuselage isn't actually a tube shape. It's got a little bit of a straight edge to it right at the very top there, and what that does is it allows it to basically move the plastic inside the fuselage a bit so that it stays up when you open it up. Otherwise, after a while, it would just get floppy and it would never stay up. So someone's great idea for displayability has become a consideration for disassembly and reassembly. With the canopy as well, I'll have to check my references again to see if the Night Boomer's canopy is what's called smoked. If that's the case, then I'll have to do the same with this. All that is basically tinting it. I'll be using, if I have to, I'll be using the Tamiya Clear products again. If you didn't see that episode or that series, then I will show you what Tamiya Clear paints can do to a canopy. And we'll cover that no problem. Other than that, the cockpit itself is going to be a dark gray to match with the aesthetic. And we'll go from there. So if you haven't seen one of these videos before, my aesthetic is, or my design philosophy is that what if Hasbro had continued taking vehicles and old vehicles and repainting them in their new sub-team colors like Tiger Force, Python Patrol, etc. So in this case, we're going to be doing Night Force. The colors I'm going to use, the two that I'm set on anyway, are Vallejo Surface Primer. I use this to prime most of my projects, if not all of them, unless they require some white primer, which will also be used in this project. But I like the color it is. It's a warm black, and we talked about the difference between a warm color and a cold color. Perfect example here is the primer black here and the paint color black, and you can just make it out in the bottle here, but this black here is actually more of a solid black. It's colder. It's more pure black, and this one here is a warmer black, and that's what we want to go for, is that warmer black look, because it'll make it look more like the plastic. I've used it to great success so far, and I recommend the same for you. The next color that we're going to use for that brilliant orange, or the brilliant red orange, whatever you want to call it, it's certainly not fluorescent after much experimentation, is I'm going to be using Evil Sun's Scarlet by Citadel Air, and also by Citadel Air I'm going to be using Troll Slayer Orange. And I will mix that to taste based off of the nose cone on my Night Force X30. There is a fluorescent orange spray paint that I used on one of my other projects, which I loved. It's a special marking paint used for marking off like soccer fields or road construction stuff. And it's quite excellent. However, doing the all-weather customizing thing here, I'm not using that inside my house. So I found that hand mixing works very well. In the minimalist video I did, where we took a Stinger and turned it into a Night Force Stinger, that orange was hand mixed to taste to the X30 and was quite effective. The reason why we're doing Night Force again is that for the minimalist Night Stinger, there was no there was no real work to be done other than the repair work that we talked about and I showed you how to do. All we did was paint a couple of accessories that orange color and it was done. So we didn't do black and we didn't do gray. And in this series, we will be doing both. Along with glow-in-the-dark stickers from Rattler Repros, and I ordered them and it took about a month to get here. But I bought one sheet of everything they had to offer just to save on time and shipping, and I knew I was going to do a few more Night Force vehicles. So these are the stickers here. They do indeed glow in the dark, which is fantastic. As far as I'm aware, they're the only company that sells glow-in-the-dark Night Force stickers that are readily available. And I have a couple of considerations as I go from my pre-visualization to the final product, and that entails just how big I'm going to make that G.I. Joe logo. It certainly won't be that big. What I did picture was something about this size on the side of the fuselage, but all things being equal, the amount and type of stickers I want to put on there, I may end up using a smaller logo, like an example here, this sticker here, because not only does it have the G.I. Joe part on it, but it has those serial numbers that Night Force is famous for as well. And I see that kind of going on up here somewhere. So we'll see about that as we go. Other than that, stickers are going to be going on the fin and on the maybe the wingtip, but definitely the side of the fuselage here, because that's just one nice big canvas for a nice big sticker. And likely the tops of the wings as well. The gimmick with Night Force, if you're very unfamiliar with it, is that they have glow-in-the-dark stickers, and that's their thing. Certainly not as many as a regular G.I. Joe vehicle would have, but then again, you don't want to have 45 little bits of glow-in-the-dark on there. You just want a few that sell the illusion, such as it is. Another consideration too is what I'm going to do with this black vent. I didn't want to remove it. It came out pretty good from the Sunbow bat, but I don't want to put any pressure, Firebat, excuse me, but I don't want to put any pressure on this part of the canopy frame here. So given that it's a separate part, and you might be able to see that there's actually a gap between this panel and the red fuselage, it lends itself well to masking and then either brush painting or airbrushing. And with the tails, I might actually brush paint those along with the wings as well. Just because the masking, even with liquid mask, might get so complex, it's just better to do a decent brush painting job on this than an over-masked airbrush application. I've said that many times before, and I'll say it again, is that while brush painting is the most simple of the techniques, it's certainly nothing that disappears once you start employing things like spray cans or an airbrush. And it's certainly saved a few of my projects in the past. Plus it lets you get into all those little nooks and crannies with a detail brush that sometimes even an airbrush can't reach. And that's all there is to it. The other parts that are going to be orange on this, which I didn't mention, in balancing it out, is that we have a bit of a conundrum here with the shape of the Firebat. So it's very pointy in the nose and very heavy in the back end with the fuselage. So all that means is the wings aren't in the middle of the fuselage, they're at the back. The tail fins are at the back, everything else is at the back, and then you have, it's almost like you split it into two when you look at the project. So you've got the rear fuselage and the forward fuselage, and the forward fuselage doesn't have all that much going on for volume or shape. And in this case, I'm not going to mask off a fuselage part or a single piece and split the colors on it, because with my Hasbro aesthetic, they usually paint one piece. So for example, if I was to make this a separate color, it would just be this, not putting a piece of masking tape on it and making it two different colors or more. Will there be projects like that in the future? Absolutely, and we are going to talk about that. But in this case, after my planning, there's no need to do that on this project, so we can keep it extremely true to the Hasbro aesthetic. So having said all that, we've laid out the stickers and everything. I've got it mostly cleaned up. I'm going to prime this thing, and we will go from there. The good thing is about the priming is that it's all going to be primed in black first, minus the orange bits. So in order to do that and balance things out, what lends itself to that color balance with this project is, aside from waiting out until the very end about what color I'm going to make these air intakes, all this Firebat is complete. I don't have to do any scratch building. The guns themselves, because they're forward on the fuselage there, those are going to be my orange bits. Then all of the ordnance that goes on the wing will be orange, as per the Hasbro aesthetic, which helps here because there's 6 pieces of ordnance, in which case you will get a line of orange down the middle, if you will. And then something on the back end, just to continue that color balance throughout, is going to be the engine nozzle. So we'll have a nice little pop of orange in the back. And given that it's such a small subject, that might actually be enough. And I'll either make those air intakes black or gray, depending on. We'll see what it looks like with, because I'm using the primer as my final black color. They'll be primed black anyway, and I can see them on there. And if I decide, well, you know what, after painting the fins, I want to make those gray, then I can make them gray. It's not a problem. In this case, the process will be additive as opposed to corrective. So without further ado, why don't we get this thing blackened up, and we will go from there. And here we are with the parts all primed up. This certainly helps to see the Firebat in black, because now, with the distracting red gone away, we can really focus in on balancing the other colors. The conclusion I've come to is that I'm happy with my color balance. These air brakes these air intakes are going to stay black. And with the fins and the wings being gray, I think that'll balance everything else out nicely. For aircraft, I do use the Night Boomer as my touchstone to see if I'm doing Night Force aircraft correctly. And given that their tails and wings are gray, I think we're going on the right track. I'm also going to leave this vent black for now, just because. But I found two things interesting when I was doing some research while this was drying. The first one is that the gray used, depending on the vehicle, it has the same problem as a lot of other G.I. Joe vehicles, if not all of them have, is that some of them fade over time. Not so much the black per se, but certainly the gray. And even within the different photos I have in my G.I. Joe reference book, the grays are different, which gets us, again, some artistic license. So if we have a color that we already use that matches, we can use that instead and save a little bit of money. So in this case, when I was looking at the Killer Whale hovercraft, whatever that one's called, I forget, the skirt is actually painted the same gray as the Sky Patrol Skyhawk in the book. So it's, to me, it seems to be the same color. Comparing it to the Night Force APC and some other vehicles, it's a little different. So I think that buys us a little bit of leeway in what gray we're going to use. Now, if using that Sky Patrol gray, it's a gray-green and it works. It's a warm gray as well. But, and don't let the word green throw you off either, right? We talked about tints and all that kind of stuff, so it just has a green tone, undertone to it. That would bring some big contrast between the fins, the wings, and the fuselage. And I'm not entirely sure that's exactly the look I want to go for. So the other color I use is by Citadel, and it's called Scaven Blight Dinge. It's darker, it's still a warm gray, but I think it helps to more closely mimic, let's say, the intended factory release color. But having said that, like I said, if you want to save some money, go ahead and use the Sky Patrol gray. In fact, depending on the look I'm going for here, I may deviate to that. That's a decision that I'll just have to make in the next step. So I get some time to think about it while this sets up and cures. But there you have it. So I think that we're on the right track. We're on the right track here with the color balance. So the orange guns, the orange ordnance, and the orange engine will be more than enough to balance out the black and then whichever gray I use here. And that it'll bring us a balanced subject in the end. So we're going to move forward with the project. The other thing I found out, because I told you I saw two things, was that we do indeed get to tint the canopy. So if you didn't watch the Sunbow Firebat conversion, first, shame on you. Secondly, just kidding, you'll get to see that process again because I like showing that process because it's really super neat. So I'm going to be using another Tamiya clear paint called Tamiya Smoke, and it's basically their clear black color. And we're going to be tinting this, which I think is going to look really awesome on the finished product. So that makes me super happy, and well, we'll certainly carry on with that as well. So in the meantime, let's call it here. This project is relatively straightforward. I had no issues getting the primer down in there, but the more I look at it and think about it, the more I'm likely going to default to brush painting the wings and tails, which, like I said before, is still a tool in the toolbox, and it always will be. So that'll just challenge us to make sure we do a nice job in painting. So until next time, what I'll say is thanks to all my subscribers. I appreciate the support, and if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next episode. In the meantime, be safe and have fun.